I guess I can start whenever. No one really gave me a heads up or anything. So I'm Chris Lopi Spain. My talk's really about my childhood hacking adventures and how I grew up hacking Diablo 2. I'm going to talk a lot about Diablo 2. There's way more involved with this, but first I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself and my professional experience and that sort of thing. So really, who am I? Like right now, this quote really sums up my life, and I'm actually going to read it to you. I'm learning to understand rather than immediately judge or to be judged. I'm not used to speaking with a mic like this. I cannot blindly follow the crowd and accept their approach. I will not allow myself to indulge in the usual manipulating game of role creation. Fortunately for me, my self-knowledge has transcended that, and I have become to understand that life is best to be lived and not to be conceptualized. I'm happy because I'm growing daily, and I'm honestly not knowing where the limit lies. To be certain, every day there can be a new revelation or a new discovery. I treasure the memory of the past misfortunes has added more to my bank of fortitude. And so that's kind of like my mantra in life right now. And so really, I'm a red team guy. Like I've always been breaking things. That's always what I've been interested in. And I just kind of fell into it whenever I was younger. So, I get really excited when I bypass things, like recently bypassed silence. And I think my exact words were, F yeah, dad. Censoring the language there, since I know we have younger people in the room. And Joe, yeah. So I'm really a gamer first. Like the reason I got into hacking was from playing video games. And I'll get into like a lot of the games that I played throughout the years and kind of the different concepts I was introduced to and what's leading me up to what I'm doing now. So like a lot of people think they're a hardcore gamer because they're sitting at home playing Xbox. Yeah, well, I used to be a professional gamer and I played like 18 hours a day. So it takes a lot of work. Like I know people don't really view playing video games as work, but when you're actually doing it professionally, like you have to play every day. It's in your contract. And a lot of people don't get that either. So I'm a hacker second, and really that was from, playing video games and started learning about different hacks within video games, and then started actually hacking the video games, and then just started to hack people that were playing the games and stealing all their items and stuff. So, I can pretty much hack a Gibson. My professional experience, a couple different companies. I worked for Discover, Trustway Spider Labs. I was an intern there on their vulnerability assessment team, developing their vulnerability scanner. And MasterCard, I did some consulting there. I'm currently at a grocery store chain called Schnucks in the St. Louis area, but I'm not here representing them today. So like kind of going to go into like a little bit of my gaming escapades, and like really everything started out with DOS. Like I'm sure plenty of the people in the room remember this, and actually installing DOS games. Does anyone know what this game is? Okay, one person that's seen my talk before. But this is Sid Meier's Pirates. You've probably heard of Civ before, Civilization. It's a pretty big game series, but I started out really like playing Pirates and stuff, and it was just a really cool game. There wasn't any like hacking stuff that we did with it, but that was like my first introduction to computers, was installing games in DOS. So I was like already familiar with command line and doing that sort of thing, and that's why I always preach that that's so important. So then we got into like Warcraft and started learning about things like map hack and that sort of thing, and that there actually are hacks for games and that you can kind of cheat at them. And learning about cheat codes and stuff like that. Another game we played was Team Fortress Classic. This is when we really learned like you could actually like script things within games and like instantly build a turret or something like that and upgrade it really quickly. StarCraft, same sort of thing, like map hack. If you look at this map, the mini map in the bottom left hand corner, you'll see that everything is actually revealed, and that's because of like this is a screenshot whenever you're using map hack. And so one of the first things that we kind of learned about in terms of like hacks in games and how you can gain a competitive advantage from that. And so I'll go deeper into that more, but that's StarCraft. And then, Diablo was really like the big game, the first game that like we really started like getting more into the hacks of like, everything was towards client side. So you could like get any item you want and do everything with your character. If anyone played the original Diablo, you guys know what I'm talking about. Really Diablo 2 was my bread and butter of why I got into hacking, or how I got into hacking rather. And so like, when we first started off playing Diablo 2, mostly it's like I wanted to be rich at this game and play in these rooms called Pala PK, which was like if you were a paladin, and it was like a PvP channel and room, so you would join up in the game, and there were tournaments and stuff like that people played all the time, and you really needed to have like the best gear to compete in there. So the whole thing was like we were trying to get rich to compete in like these little PvP tournaments or rooms. And so we did a lot of scamming and stuff like that. Like there's certain places in Diablo where you can like drop an item behind like a stand like this, and then I can actually pick it up from the other side. So people would do a lot of that, and like even classic spamming on Battle.net, like, hey, I'm a Blizzard employee, send me your CD key and stuff like that, or like give me your account information. Then we started to meet more people through AIM of all things. And so we got connected with these the Blizz hackers community, and this guy started to teach us how to find item duplication methods. So like, all right, this is gonna be awesome. Like, we'll dupe all these items, you know, get all the 20 SOJs, and you know, we'll be rich and we'll be able to get all the items that we want, and then compete in this PvP stuff. So that's when we learned about like Mousepad's map hack, and the thing we ended up doing with Mousepad's map hack was like super funny, but I'm not gonna get into that yet. I'm going to focus more on some of the item duplication methods that my brother and I personally found. We're not the ones that actually wrote, you know, the little program for it in the end that was written in VB or whatever it was back then. But you know, we were an active part of the Blizz hackers community, and we're actually an admin, and you know, we've been there since 2002, and we're some of the people that ran it. You know, the name is redacted here, but that actually is our account. So really, like, we're the ones that did find the infamous Charcy and Boo dupe. And so like what you would do essentially is just walk up to Charcy, get some information, drop your item, get some information from that, and then interact with Charcy again and plug all that information back in. And so really, like, whenever you're looking at this, like, we were really just kids playing with numbers. Like, you know, it's simple as like finding Charcy. So you needed to find the ID of Charcy, and where all those X's are, that would be Charcy's ID every time. And so there was a program called D2 Hackit that a bunch of hackers already wrote to reverse engineer the Diablo 2 protocol. And so you could just drop an item, and then you could see all the packets, since they had figured everything out and had all the data structures down. And so it's really cool. You know, you just like ran D2 Hackit, you clicked on Charcy, then you found the ID of Charcy, you drop your item, you pick it back up, you get the item of the ID, and then you go to Charcy and you send the same Imbu packets and just replace the X's and the Z's. And it was simple as that. You know, you would have the item would be in the Imbu, and then another one would drop on the ground. So we just did that over and over again, and that's how we got rich. We could finally compete in Palo PK, like, awesome, you know. I can finally have one of the best characters in there, and you know, be one of the best PvPers in Diablo 2. And it went well for a while, but you know, there's certain aspects to these things that you don't think about, and Blizzard can actually track all of this. So like whenever you play Diablo 2 hardcore, like a common thing was like you hit the Windows B key back in the day, and you get stuck, and then you die, and then like whenever you lose on hardcore mode, your character is dead, you lose everything, game over. And so like what Blizzard did to us, like patching the Charcy dupe, they removed all of the duplicated items from Battle.net. And so then, you know, it was like we hit the Windows key and playing hardcore, and you know, we're back to square zero. And so like this is whenever we started taking a different approach, and we met up with the guys from Ilmob. If you're not familiar with them, you can go out and Google them. Shout out to BAF Security. But we started looking at you know, Trojans like NetDevil, and we were also admins on Blizz hackers. So we got this idea. There's map hack. There's all these other hacks that everyone uses to play Diablo 2. Whether like you're trying to do more nefarious stuff like me, or just play the game, because like just no one played that game without map hack. So everyone was getting map hack, and everyone was getting the link to map hack from Blizz hackers. Well, guess what? I was the person providing that link. And if you ever went to Blizz hackers and downloaded map hack from the links that we posted up there, this is whenever we got introduced to cryptors and binders. And so we had an undetectable version of NetDevil that was binded with every hack that came out. And so every new hack that came out, and we were the ones being notified, since we were part of that community, we would post up and say, hey, like, get your hacks from here. And we would have Mousepad's website on there, but there'd be a couple GeoCity sites in there. You probably want to avoid those. So like they would download map hack from our site, and we would get a message on, if anyone remembers ICQ, we would get their IP. And this is whenever network address translation didn't exist yet. So like everyone just plugged straight into their cable modem, or has 56K, whatever it may have been back in those days. And so it's super funny. We would proxy chains and connect up, and I'm really using like proxy chains as a metaphor here, not the actual tool proxy chains itself. That's not what we use. But anyway, like, so proxy chains connect up. You know, they'd be playing Diablo. We'd shut down Diablo 2. We'd get their password. We'd change it to something else. We would steal all their items, transfer it over to our account, and then we locked them out of the accounts, and we just did that over and over again all day. And I have stories of like when friends came over and like in 8th grade or a freshman in high school, and like maybe it was like the first time after us like partying, and the next morning I'm sitting there just like hacking Diablo 2 accounts. My buddy's like, wait, are you hacking people right now? I'm like, yeah, like it's super easy. Like I just get them to download this, and then I just take all their stuff basically, because I'm keylogging everything that they do. They're logging into their account. It's like that's how we primarily got rich and like really profited in Diablo 2. That was very successful, and you know, we never really told any of the Blizz Hackers people about this because we weren't being very nice. Like you could call it social engineering, but really I was just being a huge dick. If you want to be honest with it, like everyone says like social engineering. It's like, well, most of the time you're just abusing people's trust, and like you can call it social engineering if you want to, but really you're just kind of being mean. So anyway, like what most people think is like, you know, in this scenario, like I would have just like profited or not. But what successful people know is like you have to fail a bunch of times, and you only learn from failure. You know, you don't really learn too much from success. So we failed a bunch. Like we lost all of our items over and over again, but we didn't give up, and we got more creative and more nefarious. So in this kind of like transitioning away from like the Diablo hacking days, I was really involved with this game called Dota, which is Defense of the Ancients. And so like I did actually used to play for Evil Geniuses in this game. I played the original map for it. Like I'm one of the people that's been around the Dota community longer than anyone. Like you know, I used to talk to Ice Frog and Yule daily, which are the people that well, Ice Frog's the guy that made Dota 2 with Valve and everything. It's just a huge game now, and I've actually opted to go to the International, which is like a $20 million tournament for Dota instead of DerbyCon the past few years. But this was the original map, and I was one of the best players ever at this specific map. But then it came out with a new one, and so some of the stuff, like methods that I came up with, I'm not actually going to play these videos due to time constraints, but some of the methods that we came up with, my team back then, like creep blocking and pulling and stuff like that, were the ones that kind of invented all of that, and now you know, people at these $20 million tournaments actually still employ these methods today. So it's really cool to see that like we're the ones that kind of came up with these unique ideas, and now people are still using them to win like $20 million. So it's kind of insane. But if you've never heard of it before, I would go check it out. Yeah, so creep blocking is like in Dota, you have non-player characters that are going up the lanes, and the whole objective of Dota is to kill the other team's ancient. And so these non-player characters are kind of like battling the whole time, and there's towers in each lane. So what you would do is you would stand in front of the creeps and block them so they would move slower. And then, you know, there were hills and stuff, and if you were up on a hill and your opponent was down the hill, there was a mischance whenever they try and hit you uphill. So by blocking the creeps, you actually get a significant advantage. And there's other things like pulling to other neutral camps so that all those units actually deny experience to your opponent. They don't get any of that experience or gold. So it was like a different way of looking at the game versus like everyone like focused on killing each other for a long time. And then we realized like, oh, there's all this efficiency and stuff we can do on the map to kind of pull people around. So again, it's the same thing. Like I failed over and over again before I was successful, even with like the gaming stuff. So some of my open source escapades, like the main thing that I'm known for is the iDroid project, and specifically in the iDroid project, I was the person that made GNU Linux work on the device. So like touchscreen, all that. Like here's a screenshot or a picture I took of my iPhone 3G running Ubuntu. This is like one of the first times we ever actually booted Ubuntu onto the iPhone, which was super cool. And so it ended up turning into a pretty cool thing. I contributed to OpenMoko and Open Embedded, and they asked me to come speak in London with them at the first DerbyCon, but I was a college student. I couldn't afford to go. So, but this was the end result. It actually did look very mobile. Unfortunately, this specific phone was stolen out of my car like a year and a half ago, so I don't have it anymore. I could probably redo it all, but it was a lot of work. So, but it was like probably the only iPhone in the world that was booting like 4 or 5 different operating systems, and everything was working on it, that sort of thing. But it was a lot of work. So again, you know, it was like fail, and then succeed. Like I can't tell you how much time we spent getting the touchscreen to work and stuff like that. We just kept having to try new ideas, different drivers, and eventually we just got to work with EVDev, which is a very generic Linux driver. So I'm also kind of known for CTF. So my first security conference was DEF CON 16. I went out there, I was 21 years old. And I met a guy there from the team Sapheads, and he invited me to come play with the CTF team because I was working on the iDroid project. So it's one of those things where I was like everything that I've done up to this point, I've just been following passion. Like Diablo 2, I was just trying to be like the best at that game. Dota, the same thing. And then like with the iDroid project, I just thought that was really cool. And so I started out just writing documentation for that. And if you go out and you go to the iDroid project wiki, you'll see I'm the person that originally created the installation guide, developer guide, so on and so forth. So I was really like an extreme power user. And then some guy was trying to get Ubuntu to work on it and boot. And I was like, hey, you need some help? And that's kind of how all that started. But yeah, so the first CTF that I really played in was DEF CON 17 qualifiers, and we got like 16th. We were a couple away from actually making it. That happened over like the next few years, and then I just kind of got discouraged because being that close and not actually making it can be kind of heartbreaking. But this was me at DEF CON 16 or 17. Someone put backtrack on a kiosk at the Riviera. I had no idea who would do that. So then I actually went to Illinois State University for a while. I went to a tech school straight out of high school and then transferred to ISU. And so I was doing all the iDroid project stuff there. Started getting involved in a lot more collegiate competitions. So like CCDC, if you guys are familiar with that, which is more of you're defending against professional red teamers all day. And I personally don't like that competition nearly as much. It's not as fun. But there's another competition that I competed in called National Cyber League. I actually did end up winning this and beating out students from MIT and stuff like that. So I can say I'm a national cyber champion, but I don't know how cool that is. So, you know, here's like one of my favorite pictures ever of myself. I was wearing a hat all day, like it was winter, and like they came in like to do pictures, like, yeah, you have to take the hat off. I'm like, okay. So, and I actually really like this picture just because it's like, I don't know why they didn't make us put arms around each other or something, but we just look really lanky and kind of derpy, you know? Yeah, thank you. That's a Ben 10 shirt. You have to be special to get one of those. Now, so like, I also just like did everything from CTF time with the team that I hooked up with, was just trying to play in all the CTFs that I could, and like it was quite a while before I actually had success in it. You know, like I would only solve like a challenge or two in each CTF, but I would learn something, and then I would always look at like all the people on my team, their write-ups, all the write-ups that come out, and I would learn more tips and tricks that way. So we won a couple different CTFs, like B-Side Chicago, B-Sides Detroit, from the whole B-Sides Joint Task Force. Again, another shout out to Ben for doing that stuff. But so I created a security club at Illinois State University called ISUSEC. Some of the guys are in the room. Shout out to them. And that was a really positive thing. But there's a lot with ISUSEC. Adam and I actually gave a talk on that at Circle CityCon. I know some of you were at that talk. Go check it out on YouTube because I don't have too much time to like really delve into things. So this is actually a screenshot from the talk on YouTube. But again, it was one of those things, like even with ISUSEC and all the CTF stuff, like it's the same theme, right? Like I failed and failed and failed and failed, and then I finally succeeded. Like failure is only, like you only have failure when you give up on something. And when you give up, that's when you failed. And sure, some things might not actually be like possible due to physics or something, but you know, like the main thing is like don't give up on yourself. Don't give up on the stuff that you believe in. Don't give up on your passions, and like to keep moving forward. Because I can't tell you how many times that I just wanted to stop doing it all. To be honest, like it was rough. So like really getting into like type of like my methodology of how I approach things now. Like I played this game called Mega Man, right? Like I guess if you're younger, you might not be familiar with it, but Mega Man, like it was just a platformer game for Nintendo, regular Nintendo, and it was a game that I really, really liked. But a couple years ago, I noticed this pattern, right, with like Mega Man and kind of application security, and even just like hacking in general. But you know, like you have with Mega Man, you have a web application. With Mega Man, you have this controller as your input, right? Well, with web application, you have a keyboard as your input, and like yeah, there may be a lot more buttons and stuff in the web application side, but it's still kind of the same concept, right? And so like the main thing that I ask myself is like, all right, what's the inputs? Like, what can I do with that input? Like, how does the boss actually work, or what I'm fighting like actually work? Like, does it dodge me for a while? Like, what weapons is it vulnerable to? That sort of thing. So, and it's the same, really like the same thing with web applications. If you think about it, like you have this input and you're just trying to figure out what you can do with the input to make something break or defeat something. So, I would really like to show this boss fight, but unfortunately I probably don't have time. So, but the main part, like with this like boss fight is like in Mega Man, whenever you first like approach the boss, you can see like he has a bunch of different weapons that he's searching through there. But like whenever you first approach a boss, like you get different weapons from defeating other bosses, and so like certain bosses were vulnerable to certain weapons. So if you cycle through all your weapons and fire each one to see like what did the most damage to it, that's the process of fuzzing, really. And so like it's one of those things where I never thought that I learned too much from video games, but really like games like this taught me actually how to fuzz things. And that's something that's very important in our industry if you want to do more security research specifically. Even if you just want to be like a really skilled pen tester, it's something that's important. So anyway, like you could see in that video, like he found the weapon that it was vulnerable to, he started firing it, and the boss was taking a lot more damage. There was a pattern to it. So like this kind of transitions to what I'm doing now. And so I'm actually trying to develop a video game. And I wouldn't say I'm trying, I actually am doing this. So the first person it's called Conscious Hacker, and the whole premise of the game really is to garner interest in InfoSec. And so how many people here have played like some war games before, like Over the Wire, Smash the Stack, stuff like that? Okay, if you haven't, I would highly encourage you to go out and check some of those out. How many people in here have played like a Steam game before and know like the Steam console and like it drops down? Okay, cool, a lot more hands there. So like if you can imagine a platformer where the premise of the game is to hack or secure a computer controlled door. And so it's going to work very much Steam console style, and I'm actually linking up real systems into the game, much like war games. So like I'm not faking it. I'm not trying to emulate it. I'm giving them the real thing, and I'm going to hold their hand along the way to a certain degree. I would get into like the different like styles of teaching within InfoSec itself, but I only have 5 minutes left. If you're more interested in that, I have some great analogies with ballet specifically, and how they teach ballet and how that's actually like the offensive security try harder attitude as well. I'm not sure if they even know like that's the style of teaching they're using, but that's what they're doing. So anyway, come talk to me later and I'll tell you more about that. So anyway, like I do have a full game design document, and I'm very close to being to the point where I could actually Kickstart or GoFundMe, that sort of thing. So I have a gentleman who used to work on World of Warcraft and League of Legends that's been guiding me through this. His alias is Zelnath. If you Google him, you'll see that he was a big part of World of Warcraft and did a lot for League of Legends as well. So he's kind of guiding me through the process of actually creating a successful game, whereas I'm doing all the security part of it, and he's connecting me with people to hire for game design and stuff like that, because I can't specifically afford him. So I think it's going to be a really cool thing. So one of the main mistakes I made in the beginning was I was just went straight in and started developing, right? Like, all right, cool, I got these rooms and stuff, like red and blue doors, and like this is going to be really sweet. And then like you could run around in the rooms and whatnot. But then I'm like, well, how's the game actually going to work? Like, what do you do in it? So, I kind of like hit that wall, and that's whenever I really started to reach out and get a real game designer involved to help guide me through building a successful video game and some of the puzzle ideas that I have to actually implement. So the whole idea is like you hack or secure this computer controlled door, and then whatever you learn in that lesson, we're going to reflect it in the platformer level and the boss as well. So we're trying to reinforce things that way. And, there's going to be friendly NPCs. If any of you guys did the Sans Holiday Hacking Challenge last year, like that was super cool. If you haven't looked at that, I highly encourage you to go check it out, because they had friendly NPCs based on like real people from Sans that were instructors, and they gave enough information to actually work through these CTF challenges. And like that actually was a challenge too. Like someone did win that, but they gave enough information to where you could get all the way through it. And I actually did manage to get all the way through it with all the information that they provided. So seeing that reminded me that like mentorship can also happen through like non-player characters. And not many people actually had to contact Sans to see what was going on. They're like, oh, well, you're overthinking it. Like, look at this hint here in the game, which I thought was really cool. So again, it's the same thing, same themes in my talk, like what most people think, win or fail, what successful people know, you fail, 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 and then finally you'll succeed. So I've already been failing at making this game for like a year or two now. And so I decided, I can't do everything. I need to realize what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. I need to contact people that are good at the things that I'm not good at to make this successful. So really I like have this like kind of change the world type of attitude, right? Like with this, like no one's really doing this right now. except for Vector 35. The guys from Vector 35, they do Binary Ninja. They actually have a couple RPG games out there that they use to teach reversing and exploit development. I'd highly recommend checking out their stuff. It's actually really cool, but they have more of like a training model sort of thing. They're not like selling games or like just putting games out there for people to play. Like I think you would like really, I think you could. Yeah, I've gone and I've played around with it a bit. But anyway, I would highly recommend checking that out. And so what I'm doing is different from them. I'm not exactly like targeting hardcore reversers or anything like that. Like I want to build like the next generation of sysadmins and that sort of thing. Like we need to hit home earlier with security and build a security mindset while we're teaching IT. So the whole idea is like I really want to change the world, and I hope you guys do too. Thank you.